So, Charlie, welcome back to another episode of Forward Muddle. I have been having the best time, like listening all about what it takes to be a premium level athlete. And I feel as though the conversations we've had have really shown some of your innate strengths. But I want to really find out, like, where have the weaknesses like appeared throughout your journey and your life? Like what has like made you the person that you are today? So I thought today we could discuss more around the idea of cultivating resilience, what that means for you, looking at the barriers that have really held you back and how it really has kind of forged you from the fire.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me.
Of course.
I guess resilience is one of those topics that I suppose over the last maybe 3, 4 years has become, it's almost a buzzword, isn't it?
Oh,
Like
for
since the
sure.
pandemic and everyone's talking about resilience. Everyone kind of is like, oh yeah, resilience this, resilience that. But it's like, what actually is resilience at the end of the day?
I could give you the
Can
scientific
you give us a
exam.
scientific?
Um, you were correct, by the way, in what you said, like to the point that I
So,
had to change my work from resilience, like teaching resilience, to psychological fitness
yeah,
because
because
everybody turned off from resilience.
it's become this thing that you're hearing about every single day, and it's I think yeah, we let's hear a scientific
Gotta say that.
definition or explanation because I think it can be perceived in so many ways.
Agreed. And when I teach, like I teach for a UK charity, we always ask the question, like, what if resilience were an object, what would that be? I'm just going to say into the mic as well. Anybody who's ever looking to sponsor a charity, sponsor Bounce Forward. They are amazing. But what they say is like, what would you be? Like if resilience were an object, tell us. And we have people who are like, it's a bouncy ball, it's a brick wall, it's a glass vase that will shatter. Like people's perceptions of what it is just vary and their belief on if it's something that you is innate or if it can grow. Like again, massive swings and roundabouts. But the science tells us that resilience is being able to adapt in different situations and different environments, and under like different levels of stress. And it's the ability to kind of move through life optimally.
Mhm.
Um, it doesn't mean we are genetically born like supercharged resilience. Some people are going to have a higher resilience level genetically, like to begin with, where others are going to cultivate it. But everybody on this planet can cultivate skills, psychological processes, and like develop resources that are going to make them more adaptable and more resilient to any challenge that comes their way. Um,
But that's perfect, I
yeah,
think, because I think resilience sometimes can be banded around as this way of overcoming problems, and
yeah,
that's it. It's just overcoming problems. But that I don't think actually is resilience to the core. And what you've said there is being adaptable. And I think
mm,
being adaptable to be able to then overcome the problem.
yeah,
That's then how resilience kind of comes into it. And I would say, yeah, it's definitely can be cultivated in anybody. But for me, that resilience has all come from not giving up. It has been, and it's not that
pretty.
I have been resilient through every single situation that I've been in, because I've been stuck in cycles where I've just kept battering away with the same intentions that I always had and not changing my mindset or changing anything. And obviously, that's taken me far longer to get out of the situation than it might have if I had had more resilience
Yeah.
at that time to recognize it needed to change. Um, so as an example of that is back in 2014, I had my first ever major injury. So I was 20 years old. I'd never had an injury history
Mhm.
before. I'd been full time skiing for probably heading into my third season. And so by this point, my world ranking was coming down to around about 150 in the world. I was looking to podium into European Cup, so this gets top fives podiums. That was my idea. Um, and I'd qualified for my first ever senior world
Wow,
championships.
that's very cool.
So it was a very cool place to be in. I was still in the junior category. There was so much, or I'd just come out of the junior category actually. I must have just come out of the junior category. There was so much for me to do. And yeah, and I'd developed this attitude of work harder than everyone else and I'll get what I want. And that was how I operated. That was how my life operated. I did more training than anybody else. I was seeing massive results from it. I was very likely overtraining, overworking, undereating.
Yeah.
But I was seeing results. So at that point, I didn't care. I was incredibly competitive. And so it was kind of a perfect storm of a lot of characteristics that one thing could just take me down.
Yeah.
And it did. So I actually ended up having a crash in training sort of 3 days before the first race of the season on the hill that I was going to then race on. So first run of the day, I was like, well, I've got to give it full beans because that's what you have to do in the race anyway. You don't actually get a shot down the course or anything before you race.
Do you know?
No. You get to look at it, look at what you're doing.
So you get to like with the horses, you walk the course first.
Yeah, essentially like that. You can't. Yeah, so you slip down the course. You can't like do a turn in the course. To some extent, you get disqualified. So you slip down sideways and you have a look at the course and how the course works with the terrain. And then from that, you just have to formulate a plan.
Hardcore.
And go full guns. And so it's quite a hard balance to strike. But anyway, I've done it. It's just training, whatever. I fell over. I made a very elementary mistake. If any skiing fans out there, you know that the outside, you need to keep all of your weight and all of your pressure, or majority of it, over your outside ski, and that's how you stay standing up.
Okay.
I let everything go onto my inside, fell inside, and ended up like crashing off the side of the piste and into the forest.
Oh.
There wasn't much snow around, so the snow level had been built up above the actual ground level, and I just came straight down onto a rock, straight on the back, and I broke 4 vertebrae.
Oh my god! At 20.
At 20, so L1, L2, L3, and 4, I had avulsion fractures, where like the sticky outside parts of your spine got pulled off of my main bulk of my spine.
Charlie!
By the muscle spasm of my back. So my back muscle spasmed so hard on the impact that it just pulled all 4 of these transverse processes, which are the side bits on your spine, just pulled them straight.
Oh my god, Charlie, that makes me want to like lay hands on your back. Let's give so much good energy there.
Anyway, and so I then had this like mad ambulance ride on the way to hospital. So I was in quite a remote part of Sweden, but it was too stormy for the helicopter to come in and get me. So an ambulance came and got me, but it couldn't go too far away from its like center point, its like hub of the region. So then I got transferred ambulances to like the next region at the side of the road, like whilst it was snowing.
Oh my
and it
god!
Was really bad. I was kind of high on whatever painkillers or whatever at the time, so but thinking back, it was pretty mental. And we got to hospital, and about 8 hours after the crash, the nurse kind of came up to me and she's like, "Yeah, your ribs and everything are fine," because they thought maybe it was some broken ribs and stuff to start with. Your ribs and stuff are all good, but you've broken 4 vertebrae. And I was like, excuse me?
Like, yeah.
No, I haven't. Like, shut up. Like, I'm fine. Like, I'd never had a setback, for like the sort of 3 years that I'd been competing full time. There was not a single setback.
And when you're 20, like you are invincible. That's what you think, isn't it? You're like, of course I'm fine.
My innate confidence that I had in, I'll just work harder than everyone else and I'm going to beat everyone else. Like,
yeah. Here I come.
But anyway, and so this all happened and I went home, I rehabbed. Luckily, there was there was a cyclist who lived relatively close to me in Scotland who had gone through a similar injury about 7 months prior, and she'd made it back for the Commonwealth Games that summer. And so I was like, well, should be fine. Actually made it back onto snow and was racing again after 11 weeks.
Wow.
Or something. Yeah, 11 weeks.
Okay.
And World Championships was just after that. So it was kind of like, cool, crushed it, made it to World Champs, didn't I? Didn't do that well, but also had made some other results in some other races. So from that perspective was fine, except like 3 weeks later, there was clearly a lot of muscular damage that was still going on that hadn't been taken into consideration when skiing is an impact sport versus this cyclist who had recovered in a non-impact sport. Okay,
so this is because obviously I'm ignorant. Like my knowledge of skiing is you. So we class skiing as an impact sport because of the potential for like what happened to you.
No, I guess it's an impact sport because through every turn I'm doing on slalom skis, there's about 5 G's of force going through my body.
Oh my god!
Yeah, with like gravity or with like you can go into a compression, and then with the way that the skis then load underneath you. So you build up the pressure on the ski until the moment where you have to release it, and that's how you create speed. And so if you imagine like bending a ruler,
Oh
like a
yeah,
plastic ruler, and you bend it from each side, you're
yeah,
building up the pressure in that ruler, and you let go, and it's you
yeah.
go. That's what a ski does.
Wow.
So you're holding that pressure under your body until the moment to let it release. And depending on the snow conditions that you've got, are going to change the forces
Yeah.
and stuff underneath you. So from that perspective, there is a lot sort of squishing your body together where it's coming from
Wow. Yeah, yeah.
gravity and then what you're doing with your
Who
equipment
well,
under your
obviously
feet.
everybody I didn't know. That's
Well,
like
no, not a lot of people know,
hardcore.
but yeah, so that's why your core muscles, hip muscles, back muscles are obviously
Just integral.
integral to what you're doing. But obviously in the United Kingdom, we don't have a sort of dedicated alpine skiing
Yeah.
science team because it's just not something that
It's
we
not
do
our
in
thing,
the
is
country.
it?
Cycling, yes, we do, and that is not something a cyclist is really going to have to deal with. So obviously, being a really inexperienced athlete at the time, I didn't question the timelines that I went back to snow at. Which was and now at 29 and multiple injuries later, I know that that was too soon,
Okay.
and that the
And
muscle damage I was experiencing needed a lot longer to heal.
okay, so if you'd have had a team around you who was specialists in like alpine skiing, then there would have been that kind of insight instead of some kind of generic like this is how we recover from this type of thing,
Exactly.
like
Well, at least the
crack
point.
on. Yeah.
And never know what can happen. But basically, so that was we're now into sort of February, March 2015 at this point, and I was suffering with back injuries. I mean, it still is part of my everyday life in that I need to, do specific exercises and strengthening and things to keep on top of what's happening with my back. But it was really impacting my day to day life until 2019.
Wow. That's
So
a
it's 5
huge
years.
yeah.
And like that's taking me from being 2021 to being 25, 26.
Good sneeze. Sorry.
That's right.
Oh, I can see again.
Well,
Just keep it in. Okay.
fine.
Sorry. There we go. Thank you.
So that's taken me from being 2021 to 24, 25.
Yeah.
That's like the whole of my early 20s.
Yeah, that's it, like for
And
normal
that's
people,
like
it's
when
quite
everybody's
hard.
like, oh, this is the prime of your life. You're
Yeah.
supposed to be having the best time. And I can honestly say it was the worst time of my life.
I can imagine.
Because during that time, um, what else? Yeah, during that time was when I had made my first Olympic Games as well, and I'd been going through these injury cycles of my back, is sort of breaking down as it did once I'd got back onto snow after the initial back break. I got onto snow, it was fine, broke down. Like I couldn't move. I had to build everything back up in the gym, built everything back up in the gym. Totally fine. Off you go skiing again. Went away down to New Zealand for the summer, was fine for maybe 2-3 weeks, and then boom, straight back to the bottom again. And it was just, I went through this cycle of getting myself strong, gymming, doing everything that I was told to do, but ultimately breaking straight back down at the end. And this does stem from the mindset I had of do more, be better, and you will be better. And I was so inflexible on those points that I never looked sideways,
Yeah.
and so
That's just
just
where full it
bullied
is.
myself straight back into this cycle every time. I didn't necessarily have the team around me at that point who could say no, stop it. Or even though I did have people
You wouldn't have listened.
telling me no, stop it, I didn't listen, because I had a fixed way in my head of this is how skiing works. This is you don't know anything about skiing, by the way, but this is how skiing works.
Yeah,
I'm the expert,
I'm gonna do it.
and I'm gonna do it. Yeah, exactly.
Wow. So that had been my question as you were talking like me through it. Like I would suggest that the majority of people after an injury like that would be like, I'm done. Like, eek, no more. But it was that kind of bloody mindedness. Because I was like, how did you feel like you back, back on the skis within like 11 weeks, did you say? Like
I was back on the skis
competing.
after 6,
Wow.
and I was at a world championship 11
And
weeks.
did you think that was it just the idea of I have got that goal that I must reach? Or was it like that naivety of youth? Like it's not as bad. Like we'll just like hammer on.
In sport, injuries are part of the game, and I know hundreds of athletes. Like everyone is going to get injured at least once in their career as an
That's a
athlete.
hardcore to
So
me. That
like,
sounds like a
what's
hardcore
going to
one.
happen? And so it was just part and parcel of it. It was like, all right, come home. I was under the Scottish Institute of Sport at that point. So yeah, it was just like, right, boom, in for physio, in for S&C, right, boom, out off you go again. It's just normal. But I had kind of always thought, because prior to the injury, I did have that mindset of do more, be more, and I just didn't understand how people could take a year out of sport, say 6 months out of sport, and still think that they could compete with everybody else who hadn't taken that
Yeah.
time out. And I was like, oh, how's that even possible? Like, you've been away for 6 months. I've been grinding my arse off.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to be better. But that's not the case. And that's definitely what I've learned then through the kind of next phase. So, and then that's where 2018 into 2019 was such a pivotal time for me. And this is where I learned what resilience was,
Okay.
because in the run up to the 2018 Olympics, as I mentioned in our introductory talk, in the build up to the 2018 Games, on Boxing Day, Christmas Eve, Boxing Day, sometime around Christmas, I started to get a really sore back. And this is clearly my back, like going into its usual cycle of breakdown. And I was like, in my head, it's just like, oh God, no, here we go again. And yes, by sort of Boxing Day, New Year, I couldn't stand up anymore.
Wowzers.
So like this is the thing that would happen with my back problem. I would try and stand up when it got this bad, and I would just pass out straight away because there was so much load on my nerves going into my legs that I would just faint.
Wow.
It was ridiculous. It was
That's
absolutely
hardcore,
ridiculous.
Charlie.
And so that at that point it was, I've got an Olympic Games coming up I bloody well qualified for. Like this, I'm gonna get there. Like that is the pinnacle of what I do, is going to the Olympic Games.
Yeah.
I will get there. I'm fed up of being this injured athlete. I'm fed up of being this athlete that can't do what I want to do because I'm injured. And so all of January then of 2018 became about get yourself fit and back skiing and get to the Olympics. I don't care what it takes. I'm doing it. I just like gritted through it. Like it was exhausting. Like those were the this whole period was such an unhappy time for me, and such a like brutal time to look back on. That I'm always sat there like, why on earth? Like what? Like I can't believe that I actually pushed myself through it day after day because I was miserable.
Yeah.
Anyway, prove myself fit, get back into a World Cup, fine, make a qualifying standard again, get myself on a plane to Pyeongchang for the Olympics, arrive in the Olympic Village, like, oh shit, I am not prepared. I am not on form. I've literally dragged my body through the last 2 months to get here. I'm not skiing well. I don't have the confidence to ski well. I'm deeply unhappy, like in myself, like in myself as an athlete, in myself as a person. I was like, I made a deal with myself when I got there. I was like, oh, I'm not really here. I can't. The performance side of me is lacking right now, but I'm still going to enjoy this for everything that it is.
So you had that very clear.
I was like, I was just going to enjoy
self-awareness. You were like, absolutely, I know me well enough to know that I cannot compete on this stage.
Like,
so I'm going to
not
milk
in a
it.
position right now exactly to win a medal, for example. And that's a horrible place to be.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But I was like, right, well, I'm at the Olympic Games. This is extremely, it's very privileged, obviously, and like such an honor, to be able to represent my country, and that was, yeah, that was amazing. That was still an extremely, extremely cool time. And met so many people. So I was sharing an apartment with Lizzie Arnold and Laura Dees, skeleton athletes who went on to win like a gold and a bronze at the games. So incredibly inspiring and surrounded by great people. And I do think I deserved to be there because I put the work in. Like I'd literally put the blood, sweat, and tears into getting there. But I was like, oh my lord, what am I supposed to do with this? And I was kind of faking it, felt like, through the whole games, because I was like, I can't perform. I've not got what it takes right now. And I remember standing at the top of the slalom for second run, just like holding tears back because I was so disappointed in myself and the fact that I was at an Olympic Games and just not able to do what I wanted to do. And there's still pictures to me this day on Google of me stood in the finish, just like the unhappiest expression on my face.
Oh, it's like the internet. Like it's just such
like I was gutted. That destroyed me a little bit. It took me a little time to work out that was all that really played a lot into just into my psychology at the time, I suppose, because I was just so down and confidence was at an absolute low. Like I was in a team with a coach, a serviceman, and another athlete that the other athlete wasn't injured, and so the three of them spent a lot of time together without me, and so I was very much like a spare part on the team as well. I wasn't that included. It then did transpire that the coach and the athlete were in a relationship
Oh,
as well, which then obviously then
yeah,
led to my
yeah.
sort of isolation on the
That's like
sidelines,
a
even though
strategic. Wow.
anyway, and so I got home after this season of which was all about the Olympic Games, but I was just deeply unhappy. I then got into my first ever sort of relationship with a boy through that summer of 2018, which was a fantastic distraction, but also the headspace that I was in, which was rock bottom confidence, showed me that literally anybody could have shown me a little bit of attention right then and told me I was great, and I was hooked.
You just
Do
needed
you
that
know what I mean? I just
validation.
needed that validation from someone, and this person gave it to me, which was in hindsight not a great thing because
Sorry.
I then went through the summer. I'd worked really hard with a physio. Like I'd moved myself to somewhere else to be near a physio that I trusted, that I could work with. And I made some really great results down in New Zealand in the sort of summer, winter for them when it's our summer. So went down there for the snow. But by October, my back
I don't know.
situation
Back again.
had reared its head again. I was in the gym deadlifting, picked it up, and just all of a sudden my back spasmed. And that was that. And I tried to rehab it. I didn't have the support of my team because the other athlete was fine. And they were doing obviously a training and racing program that worked for her because she was the one that was active at that point, which is totally fine. Like nothing wrong with that. And I was out on an Austrian glacier trying to rehab my back myself. My relationship or whatever you want to call it had gone very like south during that time because obviously I was not even being a very fun person to be around because I was miserable because my back had blown up again and I didn't know what to do and I'm incredibly frustrated. And I went home. I just called it. I was like, I'm off.
Okay.
Went home. My mum picked me up from the airport. I stayed in bed for about 2 weeks. My little sister, like as I said in the intro, my sister was like poking her head around my door, being like, "Oh, you all right, Charlie? You gonna get up today?" And I was like, because everything I'd ever known. So now I'm 20. I'm about to turn 25, and everything I'd ever known since I'd left school at 18 was ski racing. I'm an athlete. I'm a full-time athlete. I'm strong. Like this is what I do. I'm a really strong person.
And
all of a sudden I wasn't.
And like as you're telling this story and we're kind of going through it, it's like your worth and your identity was skiing. But it was that it. Like everything you would ever get, any value you had ever given yourself was about how can I be one step ahead of the person behind me?
Yeah.
And it had to be like excelling at skiing. So it was like that, what do they say? You know, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
It might come true. Like you got to the Olympic, you got exactly what you wished for. Like,
But it was not under the circumstances that
yeah.
I wanted. And
so
I think that's quite important because I defied so many people in my pursuit of becoming a ski racer. You know, I left school with decent grades, but being a full-time athlete or being a ski racer from Britain is not something that's very lucrative. You don't earn money from it, and or at least not until a certain point. And not a lot of people understand what you're doing or anything. So I would go to the hairdresser or whatever, get my hair cut. I'd be like, "Oh, what do you do?" I'm like, "Oh, I'd make something up because I was too embarrassed to tell you I'm a ski racer."
Oh my
Because
god!
any time I would say, "Oh yeah, I'm a full-time ski racer," people are like, "What?"
Well, they really? I've
Yeah.
got a Twitch eye. Sorry, you can see it like Twitch, don't you? Wow. You'd be like,
"What's that?" And you'd have to explain it. It's like, especially when you're not doing well, having to explain what you're doing but failing at it, or as I felt, failing at it, was just a really hard thing to do. And I remember even being at my granny's funeral and an aunt coming up to me and saying, like, my real name's Charlotte. So Charlotte, when exactly is all this skiing lark going to end?
wow.
It's a thing for people to do is go away and do a skiing season or go away and be a skiing instructor.
It's like a hobby, like an interlude.
Holiday, as a gap year. but not as something that you're still doing 5 or 6 years down the line. And I was like, Aunt Jane, no,
Okay.
can't be that.
Okay.
And I was like, I'll stop the skiing lark when I'm number one in the world. Like, I was so set on that. And I'd been standing up for my decision to pursue ski racing against so many people that almost admitting that it wasn't going right was incredible. Well, was incredibly hard. Not almost was incredibly hard. It was
Yeah.
incredibly hard.
Got to save face.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was the hard part. And to go through that when you're in your early 20s, when you actually don't have all the confidence of any other years behind you, because I literally came out of school and went for it. I didn't have anything to back myself up. Anyway, so I'd come home, retired, and then I got sent down to a physical rehabilitation place down in London, actually in Harley Street, which is very fancy. But GB Snow Sports at that point then realised we actually need to have 2 girls to make a team event work, because that's how we'd secured funding, was because we'd actually done relatively well in the team event at the Pyeongchang Olympics as a sort of quad, 2 boys, 2 girls. And so that was life changing for me. I was only there for 2 weeks, but day one of walking into the physio's office down there, and we're still good friends. The physio sat me down and she's like, we're not even going to talk about your back today. Like, I want to know how you are.
Yes.
And I burst out crying.
Yeah.
She's like, right, how are your relationships? And I was like, awful. Terrible. I'd had, like, I guess this broke up with this boy, and like,
And he'd been the only person, like,
the only person that
you'd been taken, and your identity from skiing had gone funny, and then the validation came from him, and then that went. So
with me, and he was seeing somebody else, and you know what I mean, like all
yeah,
of these things, and it was just like the perfect storm of like to drop somebody's
yeah.
confidence onto the floor.
So how can we get you to rock bottom?
Yeah,
But
and so I'd reached rock bottom. At least that is the most rock bottom I've ever found so far. She's like, right, how are your relationships? I was like, oh, yeah, terrible. How are you eating? I was like, relatively kind of okay. How are you sleeping? I was like, terribly. Like, not at all. Like, be up late on the phone or whatever. Just like, all that had just gone to
yeah,
crap. And it's just like all these bits and pieces. Didn't even mention the back stuff once. She gave me one exercise to do. And over the next 2 weeks with this physio, and I had a team around me with like a massage therapist and a strength conditioning coach, and that we all worked together every day of just building me back up. But the mad thing is, there was actually, you wait for this, there was nothing structurally wrong with my back.
I can believe it.
Nothing.
Like,
All
body keeps the score. It'll hold all of that trauma where it needs to until you can find a way to like safely release it.
Yeah, and then so all we had to do was work on repatterning how I was moving,
Wowzers.
because there was nothing structurally wrong. It would just be as soon as I would go into a certain position, a ski-in position,
Your body kept you safe.
my body would be like,
It's incredible, isn't
I
it?
want this. And then that would start spasming my muscles. And then because my muscles were spasming so hard, it was like gripping the nerves through my lower back into my legs. And that was causing all these sort of fainting, sciatica style situation that I was experiencing. And that was mad, because after 2 weeks of being there, I was back deadlifting, Olympic lifting, squatting, all of these exercise and activities that for years and years people were like, oh, you've got back pain, don't do them. Oh, you've got back pain, don't do them. But by not doing all of these things was like reducing my image of myself as an athlete down and down and down.
Because then you can't do the things that you have been doing that you're good at, like your core skills.
Do any of it. So I would then, in my head, was this athlete who couldn't actually be an athlete, and I couldn't do what all my teammates were doing or all my counterparts were doing, because my back was rubbish and my body couldn't handle it.
And then you take on that identity
As the injured athlete.
You are,
And I was so ashamed. But then as soon as I kind of had this door open for me of like, no, we just need to do this. And, my back, she was like, we actually did go down there. And she's like, I want to push your body to the point that it breaks, because I want to see what on earth is going on. So she pushed me and it didn't break.
Wow.
And you know what? I had people around me that I trusted who actually looked at me for me rather than me as the athlete or the
Yeah.
broken athlete, weren't looking at me for results, were just looking at me to help me.
As a human.
And that made such a huge difference. But still in my mind, I was like, I'm still finished ski racing. I'm taking on that a bit cheekily. I was like, I'll do this rehab because I want to live the rest of my life pain free and I want to do activities. And I still want to ski in my spare time and I still want to do other things, but I'm actually going to go to uni. I'm going to be a physio. Go.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I've seen so many physios in my life.
Got this one down, Peg.
Yeah.
But can I just stop there and go, because that is such a profound, like, let's go back. There's so many things. So throughout this journey, like we've said, like the identity was coupled to performance, and it was external validation, like entirely from just what I'm gathering. You can tell me, like, no, Lucy, you're completely wrong. But you needed that feedback, like, but throughout that whole vein of seeking that external validation, it just showed your strength of character. It shows your determination, your absolute grittiness, your adaptability. Like, it forced all of your incredible strengths to come through. So, like, it was so important. But this whole kind of peaks and troughs of years, and this is what makes me sad for, like, so many people like me, like Charlie knows my story. It's like having like trauma in my hips from childbirth. It was only when a physio like treated me like a human and like literally like touched my hips and allowed the stress out that I could walk again properly. Like the same. But when we don't know, like how many people are sat in chronic pain? How many people's lives are like ruined because they haven't been taught that the body isn't separate from the brain?
Yeah.
And when we have pain, or this is my perception, like when you were saying that, all I kept thinking about is, God, your body loved you so much. All it wanted to do was keep you safe. But that was it. It was keeping it that if I do this, she's not going to hurt me and she's not going to hurt her. So I'm going to keep her safe. I'm going to keep her safe. I'm going to keep her safe. So then we have to reprogram those neural pathways and all of that to say, hey, we're safe in this environment. But how many people are getting like, well, that's hippie shit.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, no, totally. And that's what I thought. Because as I said, like, I was like, no, I'm going to do this. And that's what's going to make me better. And I'm going to do X, Y, Z because I'm then still going to be able to do what I need to do because I have to do it this way to be successful.
yeah.
And it's not until I broke it down because also a key point to this place I went to in London, I was literally only there for 2 weeks before Christmas of 2018. And I did one hour training session a day.
Is that you must have been like, this is like
I was used to doing at least 4 hours of training a day.
wowzers.
For 5 days a week, plus 2 hours on a Saturday, Sunday off. And all of a sudden, I was just doing an hour, and I was like, "Is this enough?" Strongest I have ever been because it was quality focused training that my body needed.
Yeah.
Anyway, I continued on doing that. I was like, well, I'll finish the season because we have to put in a bit of money at the beginning of the season for the whole season to run. I'm like, I've committed to the whole season. I'm just going to do it. It'll be fun. And it'll be a nice send off. And my first race back was World Championships. I'm seeing a theme here. This seems to happen. First race back was a World Championships that I'd already qualified for through my results in the summer. And I came in 26th, I want to say, which was for me like a huge kind of PB.
Wow. So that was like literally came in, crushed it.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, oh, well, this is the best time. I'm having a great time. And then next race was a European Cup. And this is like one tier down from World Cup. And I came second.
Wow.
I've never come at anything close to that. The next race, major race, was European Cup finals, and I won it and became the first British woman ever to win a European Cup in alpine skiing.
Check you, Charlie.
It was just like, what on earth has just happened? And I talked about it in one of our other episodes. It was literally the separation of myself as a person from myself, like the perception of my results and what that meant for me as a human. I knew I was a great person no matter what the results were. And that just really lifted a weight off my shoulders and let me be who I wanted to be. This entire process had shown me that actually I did need to listen to myself and do what's good for me. It had shown me to actually go out and have fun with my friends, because that's pretty much what I did when I was also down in London. I was only doing 1 hour of training a day, maybe 1 hour of massage or 1 hour of physio. Then I had the rest of the day just to
mooch,
do stuff.
Yeah.
So I looked around London. I caught up with loads of my friends who'd moved down there for work. We went out. We went to Christmas carols. I had a Christmas dinner. I had a birthday party. My birthday's on like the 30th of December. Had a birthday party. Had a New Year's.
30th.
Yeah.
Is it really? And this is on the 29th of December. Cool kids.
There we go.
There you go.
But I've done all of these things that I just hadn't allowed myself to do for years, and kind of found my personality again, because I'd really shuffled myself into this athlete box of what I thought an athlete should be and should look like. And then I came out the other side of all this so confident, so sure of who I was, so sure of what my values were. And then from that, that allowed me to then perform.
Okay.
And that was huge. And that's still what I take with me to this day. And like, I wrote a sort of article at the end of that season, and I'd said, confidence doesn't just come to you, because people talk about, oh, just have more confidence. Just have more confidence. It doesn't just turn up like that.
You need competence. Competence equals confidence.
Work for it. And the working for it for me was finding that resilience piece in like, okay, I've got this problem in front of me. I'm not just going to keep bashing away at it. I'm going to work.
So you have the flexibility to like
work around the problem. And I allowed myself to have that flexibility, as uncomfortable as it was, have that flexibility to work around a problem rather than just going at it the only way that I knew how. And that is where my resilience came from, I think. And this is like the key point, I think, in my career was this 2018, 2019 sort of shitstorm. I like to call it. And that from there, it's given me so many experiences that I can look back on now. Even this year, I had an injury again. My first race back was World Championships again. And I've had all these things. I didn't make the results I wanted. But instead of panicking this year, okay, it was a little bit of panic because I wasn't making the results I wanted. I remember saying to my team, this is the time, this is the moment we just have to dig deep and work forwards and not panic. We just need to dig deep, keep doing what we are doing as a team, because actually my skiing and training had been really fast and I'd shown that I had the pace. I was crumbling in the races. We just need to dig deep, keep doing the good stuff really well, and we're going to get there. Yeah. And that was quite powerful in the end, because it's, you got to keep your body, mind happy. And if one of your body or your mind is out of kilter, it's going to affect the other.
Charlie, you are just entirely singing from the same hymn sheet as me, but that is so hard. And as you were saying those,
but that took me 9 years.
Yeah, but thank goodness, like,
to learn.
You know what
I mean?
People go 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, 90 years, and never learn the lesson. Yeah. Because, and the way I see it is that, like, you're discussing all of these threads, and you're saying things, and in my head, I'm like, internalized capitalism. Like, our success is built on, or our sense of worth and value and our ability to allow ourselves joy, connection. The good stuff in life is the reward after the hard work is done.
Yeah.
Like, where we have to flip that. It has to be the foundation upon which everything else is built, because we are hardwired for connection.
Yeah.
We are humans who need each other, and we need joy, and we need, our nervous systems are designed for recovery and slow and good conversation.
Yeah.
But we have this society that is like, push. And that's exactly, you better go. Like,
I isolated myself from my friends, as I said. I isolated myself pretty much from my family as well, because all I did was train. All I did was eat eat well, train well, sleep well, and I will be the best.
Yeah.
And
taking the whole humanness out of it.
I was so unbelievably lonely through that time as well. And
did you recognize the loneliness at the time?
Yeah, I was lonely because I was so sad. Like there was moments I look back and I remember just like how sad I felt, but I was like, it was that thing of like, okay, well, once I win my medal,
we'll fix that later.
I get Olympics, I'll be fine.
Oh yeah, we love to do that for ourselves, don't we? Yeah.
And it took me so long to kind of, I guess I didn't even notice it myself, but it was through forcing a stop and getting to that rock bottom, and then having somebody to be like, no, but how are you?
Yes.
For me just to let everything out and then begin to build up from the bottom again. And that's what it took for me to be able to, um, I suppose, bring out all the good stuff that I'd
Yeah.
learned, to be able to appropriately apply it rather than just going at something for the sake of
Yeah.
going
Just
at
going
something.
hard.
Yeah, exactly. And through this time, when I was down in London, I was about to turn 25. And I remember that being terrifying. I'm absolutely terrified of turning 25.
Really? Like,
Especially
it's
like,
old.
like, I just thought I was getting old and like physically like, oh, like this is my time. I should be in my prime. Like, I'd have a boyfriend, like, everything had like
Society standards of what should be good were like there.
exactly. But now that I'm sat here at 29, I'm about to turn 30, I'm like, I'm so ready. Like, bring it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't care. There's friends of mine also turning 30, obviously, we're the young 90s babies hitting 30, that are panicking. And I'm like,
30's the best.
that's how I felt at 25. And
Like,
at now coming into 30, I'm just like, I know who I am. I know what my
yes.
values are. I know what I've been through, and I can take on anything.
Yeah, you're unshakable.
That's how I feel. So
30's good, by the way. When I hit 30, I remember being like, I used to hate birthdays, and then when I hit 30, I was like, oh my God, I have been given the gift of another year. Like, another day, another, like, how many people don't get given this?
yeah,
Like,
you just got
I am so lucky.
yeah.
Yeah.
As well. And I think, 24, 25, especially what I've noticed anyway, for a lot of girls, seems to be a really hard period of life to get through. And so I think I've just gone through like this absolute storm of every little
Yeah. And you're away from
thing
people.
kind of coming in at once. And
Yeah.
so
And it made you. And they say, don't they, as well, like, obviously not, I'm no expert in this field, but I was reading a book the other day, and as women, our master hormone is oxytocin. The connection, the love hormone, like that, like helps us regulate everything else. And if we aren't having enough of that, then we just are completely out of kilter.
yeah,
So
that makes sense, because I was so isolated.
yeah, and then you
My
get
own
with your
journey.
buddies. Yeah, but we
Yeah.
we tunnel vision stuff, don't we?
Yeah.
Like, so to me, I'm like, surely there's only one answer to this, but you might say differently. You do it all again. Do you make the exact same mistakes? You don't have the knowing. Like, was it necessary for you to do that to develop this incredible woman that you are now?
Oh, I I'd love to go back and do it again and do it differently,
Yeah,
in the sense that as an athlete, I'd have saved so much time.
for
You
sure.
know what I mean? I'd have saved so much time, but I would. I never want to revisit those years. I don't want to live through them again, but I am. I don't know if I'm thankful or grateful or any of that, but like, you know what? I've been through them and I've taken what I can from
Yeah,
them.
taking the gift.
And I am extremely proud of who I am now. And I probably wouldn't be this, I would not be this exact same person without them. And it has given me perspectives and stuff that I don't know how else I would have learned to look at situations this way if I not had that sort of 5 to 6 years of absolute shambles. Um, so yeah, I guess I don't want to physically live them again, but I wouldn't change it, I
Yeah,
suppose.
that's a nice way of looking at it. I think you're pretty cool, to be fair.
Ever going back there, because I genuinely do look back on those times and I'm like, I do not know how I kind of kept going. Like, I remember after an MRI scan at one point, must have been about 2016, 2017, being in Austria, thinking, right, that's it. I'm not going to go home and see my physios back home because nobody can fix me. I'm going to stay in Austria. I'll see one out here. I was in an apartment above a Chinese restaurant by myself. I remember like limping my way up the stairs because walking was a problem again, limping my way back upstairs, getting into this crappy little apartment above a Chinese restaurant. There was like grease on the stairs.
Oh,
It was horrible, and just screaming at the top of my lungs, just screaming. And I was like, I don't even care if anybody can hear me right now. But like, I was by myself,
you're in pain, like
unable
all
to
pain.
really walk, screaming.
Like,
Out of frustration, out of sadness, out of, just sheer anger of the situation
needing to be
I was
heard.
in. I cannot, I could go I do not want to go through it again.
Yeah, you know you've got it in you to do it because you've done it once. Like you can bish bash bosh this, but you've learned those lessons to help you. And so you're on about it forged you. It showed you what resilience was. And like for me to summarize that, like the take home I would suggest, tell me if I'm wrong, is you learned to be soft. It learned to soften you and to connect.
Yeah.
And people don't think that is strength, but the ultimate strength and the way I see resilience is that sometimes it's all about breaking and rebuilding, post-traumatic growth, they call it, and learning just to be as open to your innate self as possible and listening.
Yeah. And I definitely noticed that in how I work with and communicate with other people as well, because my initial reaction is always get over it.
Yeah. It's just outdated beliefs, just sat there.
Yeah. Oh, come on, just crack on. And I noticed that especially with my partner is like if he's had a bad day at work or if he's failed something or had a struggle with something, and I'm like, oh God, just get over it. Like, come on, like go.
This is life.
Like it's life. Just try harder next time. But that and then I'm
try
like
smarter. Yeah.
I'm like that is absolutely horrible because that is that is what was trained into me about 18 years old through coaches, through skiing, through that, and that is like the brutal aspect of sport is that is how we were treated back then in terms of well, go again, do it again, whatever, shut up. And it's like no, and I have to sit down, be patient. Okay, well, what can you change? What can't you change? What are the hard facts? And then move from there and allow the yes, what did you call it,
Softening.
Allow just allow the human to be there rather than treating everything as if it's a robotic black white yes no go
that's go push hard.
Exactly.
So then you have got like individuals listening and they're not just athletes, they are people from all walks of life going hard to like achieve all of their goals. Like what tips could you give that allows for that competitive edge and that push, but still like builds in what is necessary to get? Does that make sense?
Human.
Yeah, like
I think
how do you have the balance between too kind, too
yeah,
slow, and still being like, we gotta go?
I think you've got to look at a list of what's important, or like you've got to okay, how I do this. I write down what the goal is, what the priority is, and what are absolute non-negotiables that I need to do. And then
to get to that endpoint.
Yeah, to get to what it is that you're working towards. And I have such a clear idea of what my values are. And some of those non-negotiables will be taken off of the list at that point.
So you'll know integrally for you what your moral values are, and if they don't align.
So I'll try to put this into an example. So now, since I've gone through all of that, one of my values is that I still go and have fun with my friends, and I'm still a social person, and I need to do that every day or every week, whatever it is. But I also need to train at a high intensity, and that is what makes up my day-to-day job. So how I then do it is that actually, do you know what? After dinner, it's a non-negotiable on doing social things or doing things that I want to do. Training and things do not come into my life after dinner time.
Yeah. So you're just keeping it free, even if it was you just sit in line the garden.
Sunday, free. Training will never come into my life on a Sunday.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You like can then combine your values and what your priorities are. And there are some things that will not change. Like if my partner says, okay, we're going to go visit friends on Saturday, and I'm like, no, I have a training session on Saturday morning, because I know that I still have to get a training session in on a Saturday morning, and it cannot be moved to the Sunday.
Yeah.
So then that allows you to be able to prioritize what you're doing, but you still need to make sure you're looking after your values, which is you as a human, and your non-negotiables. And by writing them down, you're going to be able to come up with a pretty good idea of how you can then balance you and the goals that you're working towards. I hope I've explained.
No, yeah, it does. I'm like going through my own life. That's just I'm
It
like,
might be a bit
oh,
complex because I suppose I've never actually sort of come out spoken about how I do that, but
but
that's definitely been a thing. Or for example, through that year I talked about where I started winning things after I'd come back, and then obviously I didn't go to uni and sort of be a physio at the end of it, but I did decide, okay, well, obviously having that sort of out or having that other thing that runs parallel to skiing, because I've been going through the application process and I'd sort of been creating this life for myself that was outside of ski racing. I was like, well, that's got to stay. And so I still did end up going to university and now I'm studying psychology
yeah,
instead. And that is incredibly important for me to keep in my life. No matter how much people are going to tell me that the degree is going to interfere with my training capacity, or yes, there are obviously times when races and deadlines clash and I'm clearly overstretched, but I keep that education
you
piece
make it
in
work.
there because I know how beneficial it is for me to have another side of my
Yeah.
life that's
So
not
you're a
just
completely
skiing.
rounded person.
Exactly. And
Yeah,
it's been so helpful for me to give myself another identity. For
yeah,
example, if I get injured again, I'm still a student.
yeah,
I'm not just an injured athlete, I'm a student. And I'm still learning, I'm still developing myself, even when I can't be working on I suppose, my priority job, which is the ski racing. I've still got the second job.
yeah. And when we first met, we were talking about psychology, and like I don't think we really spoke too much about your skiing, but I remember being like, "Oh my god, like she knows so much about psychology. She is so cool." So I was like, "I'm in. Like this woman is amazing." But I get the Sarah Sigmundoiter, the CrossFit lady. So she obviously does professional CrossFit, but then she's also learned how to be a pilot, and she's also done this like because same like don't want to be consumed by it.
Yeah.
And you see like these youngsters like within CrossFit, like Mal O'Brien and I've forgotten the other one's name. And they're like 18, 19, and they're like, we're pulling out like mentally, we can't hack this.
It is hard.
Like,
And it is hard to go 100% at something. I think that's what is so difficult about setting up a new successful business or something, or being an athlete, is because it is very hard to do. And so to help yourself a little bit, you got to
yeah,
remember to have your other things on the side. And whether that is, and maybe that's like comes into, as I was talking about, writing down your non-negotiables for the goal, but writing down your values and who you are as a person, is being like, no, I still want to go climbing for 3 hours a
yeah.
week. I still want to go running this many times a week, and still remembering to keep that character about you there, because ultimately you're going to be more productive anyway.
Literally, I'm just thinking that, like, if you're trying to force like a non-negotiable that is not aligned with the person you want to be, you're going to suck at it
Mm.
because you're going to be going in there like resentful, miserable,
Yes.
like on the back foot, like feeling
That
conflicted.
resentment, actually, that's a really good point. That resentment, if you've got that resentment for the thing that you're doing, it's just going to tire you out. You've got to let that go. And whether that means, actually, do you know what, I need to change direction with what I'm doing. And that's where, as we've spoken about in another episode, is just being honest with yourself. Being honest
It's
is
hard for people though, isn't it?
really
Like it's like a big one.
it's how you see yourself, but actually who you are in reality,
Yeah.
isn't there? And just trying to keep honest with yourself about where you're at and what you need to let go and what actually you need to maybe prioritize or
Yeah.
whatever.
And I'd say how I'd soften this blow because like self-reflection can be painful. It's like every single thing we've ever done in our lives up to this very point is like to serve us. It's like we have done the best we can with the knowledge that we have and the skills that we have at that time. So even if we'd like, oh, like that is brutal honesty that I've just had to have myself and it's painful. It's like, well, thank goodness that you're a human with like the ability to think like flexibly and you
Yeah.
can now make that choice that like, you know, gently forward we do go. I like that so much, Charlie. Thank you for telling us so much about yourself. And I feel like there's a lot more that you're going to be able to tell us, and I'm there for it.
A lot of waffling.
No, it was not whatsoever. It was all I'm like tell me, I want to go again and again and again. Tell me, like, and it's so nice just to like you are a human, like
Yeah, everybody is.
everybody is, like yeah, and failure is the key to it all. Like you've got to keep getting things wrong so you can get it so right.
So right, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, buddy. Until next time.
Till next